How is everyone doing tonight on this Giving Tuesday? Thanks so much for tuning in to listen to our Giving Tuesday 2022 Marine Mammal Rescue recap here at the Seacoast Science Center. Thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Brian and I'm here with Ashley. For those of you who have never met us before, Ashley is the director of the Seacoast Science Center's rescue program, and I'm the community outreach manager here. Thanks for joining, Ashley.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yeah, and thank you all for donating today. So far, we have managed to raise $5,401 to support our Marine Mammal Rescue Program here. Everything goes directly to support the work that Ashley and I and our entire team of volunteers do here at the Science Center. But we are still short of our $15,000 goal. And I will mention, so we still have $9,000 left that we're hoping to raise. It's never too late. We do have a very generous match from one of our Marine Mammal Rescue volunteers, actually. There's still $2,562 remaining in that match. So essentially everything that you donate will be doubled over the next few hours here. So definitely doubling that impact. Great stuff here. And I will mention anyone who donates over $50 to our program today on Giving Tuesday gets one of these 2023 Marine Mammal Rescue calendars with all these cuties that you're going to learn a lot more about tonight. So definitely a little thank you that we want to give to everyone that helps us out, and thanks to everyone who's helped us respond to these animals so far. Ashley, how many have we responded to so far this year?
We have now responded to 104 marine mammals in the 2022 calendar year.
Wow, so that's impressive, and we could not have done this without the help of everyone out there acting as our eyes and ears on the water, calling our hotline, knowing what to do. So thank you all. And speaking of numbers, Ashley, we're going to dive in here really quickly to start things off. So this is a recap of our season. What better way to start the recap with looking at the numbers? So Ashley, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so you guys are looking at basically just a bar graph from the time that our program started. So we started our Marine Mammal Rescue Program in 2014, and we're now closing out, of course, 2022. And this just kind of gives you a bird's eye view of the different species that we respond to each year. Now, it's important to note the first thing you might notice is, hey, she just said 104 and 2022 looks like it's just under 100. The reason for that is we don't have dolphins and whales in this graph because there's so few of them, it would be hard to see them. But not only that, we don't have the handful of unknown species. So sometimes these animals are too decomposed to tell exactly what they were. But you'll notice a couple of things. One, 2018 was an astronomical year. And the reason for that is we had an unusual mortality event. And you'll hear that term come up again, or UME, throughout this live stream. But that year, we closed out the year at 298 cases. Now, normally, in an average year, we're at about 110 at the close of the year. So this year is mirroring that, being at 104 now, and we have just a month to go. So we should close out the year at an average year. But you'll also notice 2019 and also 2022, you'll notice those kind of yellow bars that stand for PG, or Harp seal. And the reason for that is sometimes in the winter months, depending on our weather, depending on the weather in the Arctic, sometimes we have an uptick in that species. That's a species that we only see in the winter months. They migrate down from the Arctic, and we get the pleasure of viewing them. But then also, just to briefly touch on those other species, PP is harbor porpoise. CC, you'll notice it only shows up a couple of times in there, is the hooded seal. That's another ice seal species. PG, of course, is harp seal. And then HG is gray seal. And our most commonly seen seal species, PV, is harbor seal.
Yeah, so interesting data there. And with that kind of lays the land for us here tonight to talk about the very interesting responses that we've had. So I'm going to start off with two very unusual cetacean responses. This is literally how our season started off. This was the second animal that we responded to this year, was a live stranded pygmy sperm whale. So this is video from that response. This happened down at Salisbury Beach State Reservation on January 10th. So the weather was freezing. And you see that animal thrashing around in the shallows, very shallow water there. This was a male that stranded. It was estimated to be 9.5 feet long. I think we did actually get that measurement, and an estimated 700 pounds. So these are a very interesting species. I'm going to pull up some more photos here that really show this response. So something very interesting to note about this animal, and this is what we see here in this photo. It looks like what appears to be blood on the bottom of the body. Pygmy sperm whales are unique among other whale species in that they use what's called a squid tactic. They actually have a sac that's filled with a dark liquid in their intestine that can release up to 3 gallons of this liquid. So very interesting among these species. You can see this is the bottom side of that animal's face. It was thrashing around, creating kind of a difficult situation, tough response to actually get out there and help the animal. We had to rely on the high tide that was incoming to help this animal float back out. At times, it was very, essentially entirely stranded. This is close to the end of the night, right before it actually was able to get back out there. But these animals are a deep sea species. They use echolocation to hunt their prey in the deep. They are, like I said, very, very unique and very little understood. So the end scenario with this animal was that it was able to free itself on its own. We did not have to interfere, and it was able to get back out there. We did not hear from it again. So very unique response there, and we've had a few of those in the past, but I mean, I personally have never seen one like that. That was very cool. And Ashley has another unique animal response, cetacean response, that she's going to talk about next too.
Yeah, so that pygmy sperm whale, as Brian mentioned, was on January 10th. So we had already started off the year a little bit strange, or, out of the ordinary for us. But just on the heels of that, on January 19th, right in Rye at Wallace Sand State Beach, we responded to a live bottlenose dolphin. So not only did we have one live cetacean in January, but right on the heels of that, we had another live cetacean. This was a female animal. She was 9 feet long, and she weighed 600 pounds. So another very large animal. There are 2 subspecies of bottlenose dolphins. There's an inshore populations. There's an inshore population and what's known as an offshore population. We haven't submitted the genetics on this animal yet, but she is, judging by her physical characteristics, she is more than likely the offshore bottlenose species. So it was rare that she would be inshore to begin with, if she is truly an offshore part of the offshore population. But not only that, she was stranded. So, you hear us talk about it's normal for seals to be on shore. With any cetacean, so dolphins, whales, porpoise, it is not, of course, normal for them to be on shore, and that's an emergency situation. Luckily, this case was right by the office, so we just hopped in the truck. We headed right down there. We did make attempts. The water was reaching the animal when she was up on the rocks, and we did make a couple of attempts to get her to refloat. But unfortunately, when the water started going back out again, now keep in mind, she was 600 pounds. She unfortunately got her head lodged under one of the boulders. So it was really tough to get her out. She ended up, unfortunately, expiring on her own. But that presented an opportunity for us to remove the animal from the beach, get it to the lab, and perform a post-mortem exam, or a necropsy. Very similar to an autopsy that would be carried out on a human. So this necropsy revealed not only pneumonia, which wouldn't necessarily contribute to why this animal stranded to begin with, but the other really interesting find in this particular female bottlenose dolphin was parasitic tracts in the brain. So unfortunately, she also had parasite eggs in the brain. So, you hear parasites and you think, "Ooh, that's terrible." Well, it's not always the case. A lot of seal species, a lot of dolphin, whale species, they have parasites normally. They'll pick them up in the fish that they eat, things like that. But sometimes, this in particular, nasotrema, it's called, parasite that was found in her brain, generally would live in the nasal cavity and sometimes also the ears. But like any parasites, they'll move around and sometimes they will get up into the brain or other parts of the body. So unfortunately, this does cause neurological disease and cause the animal to be extremely disoriented, which explains why she came into shore, and not only into shore, but stranded.
Yeah, I remember that one was, it was a sad case. It took so many of us to even be able to move that animal out, and we did the best that we possibly could. But it's interesting to see what we find afterwards. So the next one is a bit of a brighter story. This is Beaker, the gray seal who lived. And Ashley's going to take this one away because she's the one who found this little guy over in, I believe it was Salisbury. Am I right?
Yes, that was in Salisbury, and that was, again, right on the heels of the bottlenose. And I think we'll hear it here.
So in the next video, actually, you're going to hear the vocalizations.
Oh, perfect. So
This,
I'll talk again for a
yep.
second. So he was reported on January 23rd. So we barely got a break from the bottlenose dolphin on Salisbury Beach. And you may notice on him that all white fur on the front of his face and his front flippers. And then you can also see it on his hind flippers. That's called lanugo fur. So gray seals are born with that. They generally will shed it after a few weeks when they wean from mom. But unfortunately for this little guy, he was either weaned too early, but he was exhibiting what we call reverse molt. So that's when they hold on to the lanugo fur on their flippers and their face, and it's actually thought to be due to stress. So that would make sense if this animal was separated prematurely or abandoned for unknown reasons by the mother. But let's see if we can see
And we
some
have
of
the
his
vocal.
vocalizations.
Yep, I'm going to pull those up right now. Fierce.
Little gray seal. Gray seal pups are just that. They're fierce and aggressive from day one, really. Unlike harbor seals, when they're pups, they are essentially like puppies. So they're not very aggressive. So that's the big difference with those two animals. But even to the untrained eye, you can probably notice in that video that he was extremely thin. So that was one of the concerning things to us. But not only that, he was on the beach for a couple of days, moved around the beach, but then got himself, as you could see in the video, up underneath the private dune steps of a home on Salisbury Beach. And he was getting more and more lethargic as time went on. So we wanted to collect that animal, do a full exam, and then see if he needed something else. And sure enough, the blood work revealed that he would benefit from rehabilitation. So luckily, a spot was open, which is not always the case, which we'll talk about in a moment. But we took him to our colleagues at National Marine Life Center. He was rehabilitated, and then a couple of months later, as you can see in this photo, he looked like a completely different animal. He was released alongside a couple of other gray seals. I believe Brian was there for that release. So that's always something
Yeah,
that's
it was.
really exciting for our team to be able to celebrate.
Yeah, that was a fun one to see. He was also released alongside 3 other gray seals at the same time, and they were like the best of friends. Usually, I've actually never seen that. They all hung around the beach and were playing in the water and eventually moved off. But it took them some time to get reaccustomed to life at sea. But the next one, so I know we touched on harp seals a little bit in that graph in the beginning, but the next one's going to be a harp seal that we actually found right here at Odiorne Point State Park. So this is here's a few clips from that response. This was right in our backyard here. Here we have Ashley. We actually got to take the ATV out there to help us grab to get that animal back on site to perform triage. So here you see that live harp seal. Really a unique thing about harp seals is that they do play dead when they are approached, by our team and trained professionals. It's part of, it's just kind of like a response that they have. So there you can see that animal was very easy for us to handle and look for any wounds on its body. So that animal this was back in March 23rd. This was a juvenile harp seal. So it has this very unique color pattern, which you might have seen there. And I could pull up another picture of this animal right here. So you can see that unique color pattern, the brown splotches. This animal was observed eating small rocks and had some infected lacerations. Currently, this animal is still at Mystic Aquarium, and it's battling what's called a corneal edema in both of its eyes. So it has essentially problems going on with its eyes currently, and it actually had to have a procedure to implant medications to feed into its eyes. So very intensive process right there with that little guy. And I'm curious, Ashley, do you have any other updates on that animal in Mystic right now? I know they're probably, yeah.
I don't. Last I heard, the last photo I saw, his eyes were still pretty cloudy, but they were seeing improvement. But it's hard to say. We remain hopeful until we know for sure that he's deemed non-releasable. But I don't envy them. He's got to be getting, I'm sure he's well over 100 pounds now, so I can't imagine he's very easy to deal with down there. But we keep our fingers crossed in hopes that he can be re-released. We're getting up to the time of year now that it would be perfect for him to be released back out there into the wild.
Yeah, definitely. And so now we're going to transition. So we had that harp seal right in our backyard. Now we're going to talk about an issue that has faced the region more so as a whole. And we're coming back to that idea of an unusual mortality event. So Ashley, what is avian influenza, and how has it affected us this year?
Yeah, so unfortunately this year, those two seals that we just talked about are the only two seals that have gone into rehabilitation for our team. So that's not to speak for other organizations. And the reason for that is just around when we start getting the busiest for us, for our territory, which is New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts, in the summer months, so typically July through September or October, we're also undergoing an unusual mortality event. So our partners to the north up in Maine, mid-coast Maine more specifically, are experiencing an unusual mortality event involving avian influenza. Now you may think to yourself, avian influenza, doesn't that mean birds, things that fly? And it does. It originated in birds. It is a virus that does circulate naturally through birds, but also has been passed to seals. We saw this once before. I was working with the Seacoast Science Center back in 2011. So before our team started, we mentioned we started in 2014, but I was responding as a volunteer with New England Aquarium at the time. And we had an avian influenza outbreak in Hampton, was ground zero. So this is very similar. It's again, a virus that passes from birds to seals. It can be respiratory, but also through feces. Seals aren't very clean animals. They'll actually kind of, especially when they're in rehabilitation, they kind of roll around in it. So we try to keep their enclosures very clean. But for that reason, because it spreads so easily, rehabilitation facilities had to close to new admits during that time. So this started in July. Luckily, in seals, they haven't had another positive case since late July. But with that being said, the virus in birds is starting to uptick again with the cold weather. So this is a virus that does really well in the cold weather. So if, we're keeping the unusual mortality event is still open through NOAA fisheries. And the reason for that, you may say, well, why is it still open if you haven't had a positive case in a few months? And the reason for that is with the cold weather coming and the virus increasing again in birds, we're just not sure what it's going to do with seals. So we remain what we call a surveillance organization. So we haven't had, knock on wood, any positive cases in our territory. But because we're so close geographically to mid-coast Maine, we're sampling any animals that we have the opportunity to sample to look for this virus and make sure that it's not spreading even further.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a curveball for the year for us. At an interesting time. So very, very unique to this year. And constantly, it's interesting to see how these things are cyclical, how they change. But the next one that I'm going to talk about, this wasn't exactly a response. This is more so a special visitor that came by our coast that most people never in their entire lives get to see. This is the most endangered whale species that is in the Atlantic Ocean here. This is the North Atlantic right whale. We actually had the pleasure. Someone called our hotline when they saw this just off of Hampton Beach in New Hampshire, and these are some photos that I was able to get down there and take. Just observing the animal, it was completely healthy, floated, swimming freely on its own. But this is a North Atlantic right whale, and you can see it's that little black splotch there, kind of in the ocean. And what you can see there is a V-shaped spout coming from its blow, and that is completely unique to North Atlantic right whales. No other whale species is going to have that V-shaped spout in our waters. So truly a special thing to witness and see. And what most people don't realize is that these animals, do spend time off of our coast here in our response territory. They can be found in New Hampshire, northern Massachusetts. They mostly kind of move through this section of coast a bit more on their way towards feeding grounds more north in Canada. But just a unique, that was the first time I have personally ever seen one of these animals live. I know, Ashley, I think you texted me from the hotline and said that this animal was out there, and I rolled out of bed at like 6 a.m. Not expecting this to be my day at all, and had the true pleasure to see that animal and seeing people were stopping on the side of the road, taking pictures, asking what was going on. It was truly a magical moment. The community was really kind of all out there, like just watching in awe as this animal and they move so close to the coast. They are a truly unique whale species up here. So truly a special moment here in 2022 that we got to see. And the theme is kind of cetaceans here so far, and we're not going to change that up with the next one. This was a response that Ashley spent quite a significant amount of time attending to. So Ashley, tell them about these Risso's dolphins that were down in Gloucester.
Yeah, so our response territory, permitted response territory, is New Hampshire and northern Mass down to Essex. So for those of you familiar with the area, just south of Crane Beach. So these two Risso's dolphins stranded inside the Annisquam River in Gloucester. So why were we there, you might ask? NOAA Fisheries, who manages that area, which is known as a gap in coverage in territory, because there's no formal organization like ours that's responsible for that area, reached out to us because these two animals had stranded live, looking for assistance. So it wasn't only us that responded. We also had colleagues from International Fund for Animal Welfare down on Cape Cod in Falmouth, as well as whale and dolphin conservation in Plymouth, and representatives as well from NOAA Fisheries. So it truly took a village, these two animals. So we all met out there on site. There were two animals. One was male and one was female. Both were juvenile Risso's dolphins. So this is generally a species that's offshore, in offshore waters. And, these animals, you may look at this photo here and say, wow, they have, a lot of different scars and patterns on their body. That is completely normal. So as these animals get a little bit older, they're highly social. So it's called rake marks, but they'll rake along each other with their teeth. Something that's really unique to these animals. So you can see all those scar patterns there. But something that's really unique to these animals, they only have teeth in their lower jaw, and they have only a few pairs. So one of these animals had 3 pairs, so 6 teeth, and the other animal had 4 pairs, so 8 teeth. So really unique that they have so few teeth. But the other scars that they'll have on their bodies are also from squid, which is a prey item that they eat. But not only that, cookie cutter sharks will actually go after these animals, especially from underneath, so down below. And they'll come up and they basically take a bite and they spin in a circle and just pull a chunk of flesh off of these animals, leaving scars behind. So when these animals scar over, they don't have pigmentation in those scar marks, which leaves those white patterns. So pretty unique animals. These were the first 2 that our team had responded to. I think Brian has seen them alive offshore before, which he can probably speak to you about. But we were able to successfully tow in with the help of the harbor master. We certainly couldn't have done it without them. We towed this animal to the boat ramp, one of them, the male, and when they were alive, one was noted to be swimming in circles, which is always concerning. So they were deemed to be in poor overall health. So we had made the decision with the veterinarians from IFA, so close consultation with them on site, that these animals needed to be humanely euthanized. So that was carried out with the help of a sedative. We actually didn't even get to the stage of using the full drugs to euthanize the animals. They passed on their own with sedation. So the male was removed, brought to the laboratory. So we partner with University of New Hampshire, right in Durham. And we were able to do the necropsy on the male. So I was there for that. And unfortunately, this animal had a chronic condition. So the full results are still pending, meaning that the histopathology, the individual slides of all of the different samples that we take from every organ, still need to be fully looked at. But the gross results or the initial results show that the animal did have a chronic condition, meaning it hadn't eaten for quite a while. Its stomach was totally empty, GI tract totally empty. And just like the bottlenose dolphin, this animal also, we found a lesion on the brain. So I was actually part of that necropsy, which was really interesting. So lesion on the brain typically will indicate the nasotrema, those brain parasites. So again, full results are pending, but that would fully explain the swimming in circles prior to stranding.
Yeah, very interesting. And the teamwork there, I mean, it's so clear how closely we work with all of our partners. But yeah, alluding to your story, yeah, the only other time that I've ever seen one of these, I used to work on as a fisheries observer on board commercial fishing boats, and we were way out at sea one night. I was collecting my data, throwing fish overboard, and all the lights were on, and I looked down, and the water's super clear offshore, very, very, very clear. I could see maybe 100+ feet deep. There was a big white dolphin circling the boat right underneath where I was throwing all the fish, and I swear it actually spy hopped out of the water. It was a very clear night, and I swear I looked it right in the eye. I know it's one of those tall tales. Oh, did he really do that? But yes, I swear it happened, and truly true. I had to look up this animal afterwards. Just it was so white from all of those rake marks.
That's amazing.
Truly a unique animal. So yeah. And now we're gonna slide into our next response. This was probably takes the cake for the most interesting response of the year. Shoebert, the legend, the myth, the super popular icon of Beverly now. I think he's essentially a pop star at this point. Ashley, do you want to start off with the adventure that was Shoebert? And here's
Sure.
Shoebert.
I did also hear that there was a Shoebert for mayor initiative going around, and that some people wrote him in on the ballots in Beverly. So he really did become a celebrity in Beverly. So this animal was first reported, again, you may think, Beverly, that's outside of your response territory, but this was another case that was called into NOAA Fisheries, into their hotline, and then they called in reinforcements. So this was another collaborative effort, which is huge in our network, especially when you're dealing with larger animals. So this animal was just over 230 pounds. So he was a subadult, younger gray seal, so not a full size. Full size male gray seals will be upwards of 800 pounds. So thankfully, he was, dare I say, only 230 pounds.
Thankfully.
Yeah, but he found his way through a culvert and into, from Beverly Harbor, so likely followed some fish on those astronomical high tides we had around that time period, and found himself in Shoe Pond, hence the name Shoebert. So there's two sections of that pond. He spent a little bit of time in the lower pond, which is a pond that we were actually considering with the town and the property manager to drain that pond and then see if we could get in there and capture him to get him out after a number of days. But he took it upon himself to leave the lower pond and go into the upper pond, which is larger, deeper, and not as easy to drain. So we found ourselves, later after he had been there, I think it was close to a week, working with, again, partners from International Fund for Animal Welfare and Whale and Dolphin Conservation, as well as NOAA Fisheries. We started to decide, what are our options here to get this animal out? He was attracting an unbelievable amount of attention. He had been through rehabilitation before, so he did have a tag on his hind flipper. Later, he was identified as an animal that went through rehabilitation at Mystic Aquarium in 2018. So he has been on his own for a number of years, clearly doing very well. He was extremely chubby, really had no reason to leave. There were no predators. There was endless fish for him. But, the public, there were so many people coming and going over the days that we were there. He really became a social media sensation and was really curious about people. So we wanted to be sensitive to the fact that we didn't want to exacerbate his interest in people, causing him to become a problem animal down the road. So we wanted to evaluate some of our options to get him out of there and put him back out into the ocean, because clearly he could have left on his own. He, at one point, had gone back to the culvert. They opened the little gate that was down there. He went out, but then hopped the dam and came right back in. So he didn't necessarily want to leave in those, that week leading up to us opportunistically trying to catch him. But he had the upper hand. He was an animal that is built for the water. He was in the water. He's faster than we are. Brian paddled around that little boat as we tried to catch him with hoop nets because he was curious of people. So we were hopeful that we might be able to get him into that net. Unfortunately, we weren't. We had to call it quits at dark. We were kind of making jokes between us. How long is it going to be before, that same morning he was actually in the parking lot. So we, we're joking with each other saying, all right, how long is it going to be until one of us gets a call on the hotline saying that he's out of the pond again and in the parking lot? And Brian, what happened next?
Oh, it was right off the bat. That the middle of the night. I mean, this is why part of the reason he was such a news sensation. He turned himself into the police station. Like you couldn't write this up any better. He got out of the pond, traveled across the parking lot in the middle of the night, and actually they saw him on the police cameras at the police station, and that's how they knew he was there. And they called us, and they called NOAA Fisheries, and they were able to, our partners were able to get down there and corral him, and he was brought to Mystic Aquarium where he was released. But I will say, like, these pictures are they make me laugh so hard. I mean, there was no chance that we were, he was toying with us at that point. We were just trying to, entice him to come closer to shore so that we had a shot at potentially removing him from the pond. But we were paddling. You could see here he would dive back down as soon as we thought he might be coming close to us having a chance, and he'd pop back up on the other side laughing at us. So yeah, one more look at Shoebert there. This what it was, a special animal, very interesting story. And yes, so Shoebert is back out in the Atlantic Ocean living.
Yeah.
What is,
and he has a satellite tag on him. So
Yep.
researchers and biologists, especially those of us that worked with that animal, we are able to see where he has been going. So I'm sure eventually an update will be shared. But at this time, where he did become such a big media sensation, we don't want to share his exact whereabouts, so that people aren't out, looking around for him, for understanding.
Exactly.
Understandable.
Exactly. He's living his best life out there right now. And it's a key. And that's actually something we'll bring up in this next bit too. If you ever do see a seal that is sick or injured, one of the keys, and this is something we learned from Shoebert, is not to share the location on social media. That's actually a practice that we implement here with the Seacoast Science Center Marine Mammal Rescue Team. If there's an animal that we're actively responding to, we actually won't even share the update until that animal is gone from the initial location. We just don't want people see it on social media, they flock to that area. So that's just kind of standard practice and great practice for wildlife in general. And this is our last one of the evening here, and this is very, very recent. So recent that it's, I think, still happening. Ashley, you want to talk about the little sensation who's been moving around Exeter?
Yeah. So as if this year couldn't get any more strange with unique responses, we received a call on Friday, this past Friday, of a seal up in the Squamscott River in Exeter, New Hampshire. So, it's not entirely unheard of that a seal would be up there. They do follow the bait fish and things. So this animal is in a location that on Google Maps looks like it's about 6 miles from Great Bay, which of course connects right to the ocean. So we probably followed some fish up there. but certainly a unique situation. So he's been hauling out in and out of the water completely on his own for the last few days. So we've been keeping very close eyes on him with the help of the police and fire department, especially one of the dispatchers there has been hugely helpful. But not only that, our volunteers as well. And one of our staff members also got to see this animal because she lives in Exeter. But we've been trying to keep a close eye on him. He's acting normal. You can see in this video from one of our volunteers, Bryn. She was able to capture this. He was eating fish, swimming around. I'm not sure exactly what kind of fish that is, but not captured in that video. He was able to fend off a bald eagle that tried to steal the fish from him. So he seems to be doing pretty well. He does have a wound on his lower chest as well as a little bit lower on his abdomen that we want to be sure to keep a close eye on. But other than that, he has passed fecal and it did, that's something that as biologists, we do need to look at to, it can tell us a lot about how the animal is doing. We didn't notice any parasites and it looked completely normal. So, we did get a call about him this morning at 11 o'clock. He was hauled out again, but didn't stay long and went back in the water. And we haven't gotten another call this afternoon. But we do have a spot kind of on hold, if you will, in rehabilitation in case he does need it. We can collect him and get him in to get the care that he needs if needed.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so that is as up to date as you can get with our responses for this year. Thanks, Ashley, for spending the time and sharing all this info. And thank you all again. I'll just echo our thanks to you all. We could not respond to all these animals without you knowing who to call, knowing what to do, knowing to keep a safe distance away, 150 feet for seals, and supporting us. We are able to operate this program with the help of some federal money in the form of a grant, but we rely heavily on support from our local communities in New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts. So opportunities like Giving Tuesday are always, hugely impactful for our organization. Every dollar, you can think globally with these issues facing marine mammals, but act locally in supporting us and get a free calendar if you donate $50 to support this work. And again, we're just super thankful. These are the people who it goes out to helping is ourselves and our volunteers. And we couldn't do it without you all. Ashley, is there anything that you wanted to kind of end on?
Yeah, I do see there was one question in here, or a couple of questions. So if any of you have any last minute questions, pop them there in the chat, either on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching from, and we'll try to get to them. We can always respond to them after this feed is over as well. But speaking to that Exeter seal, it says, isn't he too young to be on his own by himself? And that's a great question. And this was a harbor seal. So he would have been born May or June, depending on if he was an early or late pup, and would have only been with mom for 3 to 4 weeks. So 21 to 28 days. And then harbor seals are completely independent. So he is still navigating his first full year. He is a small animal, so he was more than likely a 2022 pup, but he is on his own. So he's all set. He seems to have gotten some good tips from mom on how to catch those fish. That fish was huge in that video compared to his little head. But he has been successfully eating, so that is great. And then I just wanted to update you guys. We mentioned our volunteers as well. So we could not run this program without them. And they're not only volunteers, they're also some of the donors on this Giving Tuesday fundraiser specifically. So we want to thank them. The match is also from one of our donors and Marine Mammal Rescue volunteers, Julie Black. So that is huge, and we can't thank you enough. And not only that, we had one of our volunteers who donated today, also had his company, Altus Engineering, locally here in New Hampshire, donate $500 as well. So that is huge, and it goes so far, and we can't thank everybody enough. So just to update you guys, it looks like during this stream, we've had a handful more donations come in. So thank you so much. Again, no amount is too small, and we are just shy now of $6,000.
Yeah. So this is awesome, and huge thanks to our volunteers. That I can, we went up $400 in just 30 minutes. So
Yep.
massive thanks to you all. And thanks to, it really is such an awesome community here. And I will end with this. If you see a seal on the beach, you know who to call. And definitely don't be afraid to stop into the Science Center, ask for us, say hi if you see us on the beach. We will talk more than you would probably want to about marine mammals. So plenty, we are definitely the some sources of knowledge on this subject matter around here. Feel free to reach out absolutely anytime. Our door is always open. So thank you all, and we look forward to reaching our goal of $15,000 this Giving Tuesday. Yeah.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night, everyone.